So now that we've covered the basics of the concepts of methodologies and some that are available, it's time to talk about some of the steps involved in penetration testing and ethical hacking methodologies. And this is actually, all paperwork and standardization aside, this is the list of steps that we're going to take during the actual attack process. The first of which is going to be reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is absolutely important, and more so for larger companies and people that might be housing sensitive data, simply because reconnaissance will allow us to identify weaknesses in information disclosure for particular companies. The basic idea is to gather as much information about the target company or target organization as possible, including network infrastructure information, company policy information, even personnel information such as names, phone numbers, and email addresses. All of these different things put together can actually correlate to a high level of vulnerability if left unchecked. We can actually break reconnaissance out into two different types, that being active and passive reconnaissance. Passive reconnaissance generally means that we're going through and we're using techniques and possibly even tools that are undetectable by our target. In other words, we might go to their website, for example, and see what's listed on their website. See if there are any job postings that might list out specific technical requirements that they're looking for in a particular IT person. That would help us identify some of the information about what's inside their network. If they're looking for a SQL design engineer from Microsoft SQL 2000 with experience in distributed transactions and possibly DTS packages, for example. Well, we already know just by looking at the job description that those are actively in use inside that company's organization, or will be once that job role is filled. So just that little bit of information, which is publicly available and made so by the company, we can do a lot of things. Now, active reconnaissance is when we actually start touching the company. And what I mean by that is calling people, calling a secretary and querying for information about the availability of a particular person. Possibly even going into the company, walking through the front doors and seeing what kind of physical security they have. Maybe even gaining access to systems where we can kind of look at them and tell they're running particular IBM servers or gateway servers. They may have BIOS information that might be vulnerable. So once we move into active reconnaissance, which generally is post-passive reconnaissance, then we start taking a little bit more of an intrusive role against the company. That might mean emailing people inside the company and contacting them, or just maybe looking at the source code of their website and things like that. A lot of the different reconnaissance tools and methods and particular processes are not clearly defined as being active or passive. A great example of this would be gaining access to one of the systems by using kind of a known tool that's not really an exploit, maybe uploading a file to an FTP server. Great example of that. It's an anonymous public FTP server, no legal issues there, but doing a little bit of research, that could be considered active or passive because it may or may not be detectable by the target. So again, don't worry too much about classifying reconnaissance as active and passive. Just understand the concept of reconnaissance itself.